At 7 months pregnant, I sat in my leaking apartment. Finishing the wedding gown, my husband said, was for a secret client. Then his face appeared on national television, smiling beside a famous actress, while she wore the dress I had sewn with swollen hands and sleepless eyes. His mother stood in my doorway with an envelope of hush money and a bottle of fake prenatal pills. She thought she was paying me to disappear. She did not know she had just handed me the weapon I would use to destroy them. "Take it," Margaret Whitmore said, dropping the thick envelope on my sewing table like she was throwing scraps to a dog. "That is more kindness than a woman like you deserves." The old machine shook from the impact. The half-empty mug beside it tipped, coffee bleeding into a pile of white lace. On the television, the cathedral doors opened, cameras flashed, and Ethan Whitmore, the man who had kissed my forehead that morning, lifted the veil of Ava Monroe, America's sweetheart, in front of the whole country. Margaret watched my face the way people watch glass crack. "Do not make a scene, Leela," she said. "You were useful. That does not make you family." I kept my hand on the fabric. My finger was bleeding where the needle had pierced me. But I did not move. She smiled wider. "You should be grateful. Ethan could have thrown you out with nothing. Instead, he gave you a quiet exit." I looked at the bottle of pills on the table. The label said prenatal support. Ethan had brought it that morning with breakfast and a kiss. My neighbor Ruth pushed through the door without knocking. She had been a nurse before her knees gave out, and the second she saw the bottle, her face changed. "Lila," she whispered. "Who gave you this?" Margaret's mouth tightened. Ruth twisted the cap, checked the tablets, then stared at me with horror. "These are not vitamins. This can force a miscarriage." The room went silent. Except for the applause from the television, Margaret lifted her chin. "Do not be dramatic. Accidents happen to women who chase men above their class." My babies kicked inside me, hard, as if they had heard her. I picked up the envelope, not because I accepted her price, but because my children and I needed to survive the night. Margaret laughed. "Smart girl." I walked to the door with my small bag, the bottle in my pocket, and the wedding gown still warm from my hands. Before I stepped into the rain, I turned back. "You do not get to bury blood and call it charity. My name is Lila Mercer." Back then, I was a seamstress in Queens, living above a closed laundromat with a roof that leaked every time New York decided to punish the poor. Ethan Whitmore was the heir to Whitmore Health, a company with hospitals, pharmacies, and private clinics across the country. To the world, he was polished, generous, intouchable. To me, he was the man who slept beside me, promised me a home, and hid me like a stain. I made it down 2 flights before my body gave out. The rain hit my face so hard I could barely see the sidewalk. A cab splashed dirty water over my legs. Pain ripped across my belly. Sharp and low, I grabbed the railing, missed, and fell against the concrete steps. "Help," I tried to say, but the storm swallowed it. Ruth found me curled beside the trash bins, my dress soaked, one hand clamped around my stomach, the other gripping the pill bottle like proof that hell had a label. She dragged me into her apartment. The power went out before she could call another neighbor. The room filled with candlelight, thunder, and the smell of old wood. "Stay with me," Ruth said, tying her gray hair back with trembling hands. "Breathe. Baby. Not for him. For them, I can't." I gasped. "Yes, you can. You already survived the worst man in that room." The pain came like waves smashing through bone. I bit down on a towel until I tasted blood. Every time I wanted to disappear, I saw Ethan smiling on that screen. I saw Margaret's hand on the envelope. I heard Ava Monroe laughing into cameras, wearing the dress I had believed was my doorway into a better future. Then a cry broke through the storm. Small, angry, alive. Ruth wrapped my son in a towel and put him against my chest. "Talk to him," she said, I touched his cheek with one finger. Noah. A minute later, my daughter arrived. Smaller, fierce, fighting the air, like she had already decided the world owed her space. Grace. I whispered. For one breath, I thought we had won. Then Noah stopped crying. His lips turned blue. His little chest went still. No. I said, my voice breaking in a way I had never heard before. Ruth. Do something. Ruth rubbed his back, cleared his mouth, breathed near him, prayed under her breath. The candle went out. In the dark, I held Grace against my skin and listened for my son. Nothing. Then, a thin cry rose from Ruth's arms. It was not loud. It was not strong. But it was life. I sobbed then. Finally. Not for Ethan. Not for the gown. Not for the wedding on television. I cried because my children had chosen to stay. 3 years later, I sold handmade balms and herbal teas at a weekend market in Brooklyn. With Grace asleep in a carrier on my back and Noah holding the edge of my coat, my fingers were rough, my shoes had holes, and I skipped breakfast more often than I admitted. But my children were warm. My rent was late. Not unpaid. That was victory enough. Mommy, I'm hungry, Noah said, rubbing his eyes. After we sell these last jars, I told him, smiling like my stomach was not eating itself. Then bagels? Big ones. A woman collapsed in front of my table before noon. People stepped back. Someone filmed. Someone yelled for an ambulance but did not move closer. I knelt beside her. She was pale, sweating, fighting for breath. I opened one of my jars, rubbed a little balm near her temples, and held my tea blend under her nose. Stay with me, I said. In through your nose. Slow. Her eyes fluttered open. A Blacktown car pulled to the curb. A man in a charcoal coat rushed out, panic breaking through his expensive calm. Elena, he said, dropping beside her. Talk to me. The woman gripped my wrist. She helped me. Daniel. That was how I met Daniel Cross. He was a trial attorney. The kind people whispered about in courthouse halls. He thanked me, gave me his card, and told me to visit his office so he could repay me properly. I almost threw the card away. Pride is expensive when you are poor. That night, when I got home, my door was cracked open. My coffee can was gone from under the bed. Every dollar I had saved for Noah and Grace's preschool deposit had vanished. I sat on the floor with the empty hiding place in my hands. My children were asleep on Ruth's couch. The apartment smelled like damp socks and panic. Daniel's card was still in my pocket. The next morning, I went to his office in Midtown wearing my cleanest blouse and the look of a woman who had no more corners to back into. White flowers stood in the lobby. Black ribbons hung from the front desk. Daniel was behind his desk when I entered. His suit looked perfect. His eyes did not. I'm sorry. I said, I did not know. My wife died last night, he said, voice flat. Not from her illness. From a contaminated treatment supplied through Whitmore Health. The name hit me like cold water. Whitmore. Daniel looked up. You know them. I should have lied. Instead, I took the pill bottle from my bag and placed it on his desk. They tried to kill my children before they were born. He did not interrupt while I told him everything. Ethan's secret, the televised wedding, Margaret's envelope, the pills, the night Ruth delivered my babies in the dark. When I finished, Daniel stood by the window, staring down at the city like he wanted to put his fist through it. They killed my wife for profit, he said. They tried to erase your children for reputation. Different doors, same house. I came here for work. I said, not revenge. He turned back. Good. Work first. Revenge later. That was the beginning of Mercer and Cross Wellness. Daniel handled the law. Licenses. Suppliers. Investors. And every shark that smelled blood. I handled the formulas. the quality, the customers, the women who came into our first small clinic with pain in their hands and fear in their eyes. I never sold miracles. I sold what I could stand behind. Clean labels. Honest testing. Real care. The first year nearly broke me. The second year taught me how to negotiate without lowering my eyes. By the fifth, Mercer & Cross had clinics in several states, a manufacturing lab in New Jersey, and a reputation Whitmore Health could not buy. Noah and Grace grew up with books on the kitchen table. Bedtime stories from Ruth. And Daniel fixing loose cabinet doors when he pretended he was only stopping by with documents. He never pushed. That mattered. One morning, Daniel placed a folder on my desk. Whitmore Health is bleeding, he said. Investigations. Lawsuits. Supply chain issues. They need a partner. I opened the folder. Ethan's face stared back from a business article. Older. Thinner. Still handsome in the way expensive things can look polished even when they are cracked. They asked for a meeting. Daniel said. With us? With you? I closed the folder. My hands did not shake. When Ethan walked into my boardroom with Margaret, I was facing the window. I let them sit. I let them wait. I let them feel the kind of silence they had once used to crush me. Ethan spoke first. Using the same smooth voice that had fooled me. Thank you for seeing us. Whitmore Health has a long history of service. Your wellness brand has reached. Together, we could create something meaningful. Margaret added. A partnership would raise you into circles you have not yet entered. I turned my chair around. Ethan dropped his folder. Margaret's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Hello. Ethan. I said. Margaret. Ethan stared at me like I had walked out of a grave. Leela? Still breathing. Sorry to ruin the family tradition. Margaret recovered first. This is absurd. You are the chief executive? No. I said, I am the owner. Ethan stepped toward the table. Anger rushing in to cover his fear. Where did you get this? Who funded you? Who did you trick? I leaned back. I survived. That tends to upset people who counted on your grave. His face softened instantly. Too fast. Too practiced. Leela, you do not understand what happened back then. My mother controlled everything. I was trapped. I thought about you every day. You sent pills? His jaw tightened. I did not know what they were. You knew enough to hide me? He reached for my hand. I still love you. I moved my hand away. No. Ethan, you love doors that reopen after you burn the house. Daniel entered before Ethan could speak again. He stood behind my chair. Calm as steel. Mercer & Cross is not interested in saving Whitmore Health, he said. Ethan looked him over. And you are? The man who read your files? I slid a document across the table. We will buy your failing division for 20% of its market value. Take it now. Or wait until the investigations make the name worth less than the furniture. Margaret's face went white. Ethan's eyes filled with a hatred I recognized. It was the look of a man who had lost control and blamed the person who escaped. This is personal, he said. I stood. No. Personal was childbirth on a floor while your mother counted hush money. This is business. I left Daniel to end the meeting. That afternoon, Ethan saw Noah and Grace outside their private school. I knew because my security called before he even left the curb. By the time his car stopped near our brownstone, I was already outside. Noah stood behind me with a plastic dinosaur in his hand. Grace had her backpack straps clenched in both fists. Ethan stepped onto the sidewalk. Staring at them, Leela, he said, voice shaking. They are mine. No. You cannot deny blood. I can deny danger. He tried to step closer. Noah lifted the dinosaur like a sword. Leave my mom alone. Ethan froze. Margaret's white SUV rolled up behind him. She stepped out in pearls and a cream coat, looking at my children like they were assets on a balance sheet. So it is true, she said. The Whitmore line continues. Grace hid her face against my back. They are not your line. I said, they are children. Margaret smiled. Children need a name, a real one. You have done what poor mothers do. You kept them alive. Now give them a future. They already have one. With you? She said, laughing softly. A market girl in a suit? Ethan looked at me. Desperate now. We can work this out. I can be their father. You resigned from that job before they took their first breath? Margaret pulled an envelope from her bag. Court papers. You hid them from their father? She said. Emergency custody petitions are very persuasive when presented correctly. My blood turned cold. She leaned closer. I do not need to love them to win them. I only need a judge who respects our name. Tell me honestly, if someone tried to steal your children under the law, would you stay silent? That night, Ava Monroe cried on live television. She wore a plain white dress, soft makeup, and the face that had won awards. She looked into the camera and painted herself as the betrayed wife. I only want to protect my marriage, she said. A woman from Ethan's past is using innocent children to extort him. It breaks my heart. Within hours, my company pages filled with hate. Homewrecker, gold digger, liar, bad mother. I watched the comments scroll until the words blurred. Daniel walked in and put a bowl of chicken soup on my desk. Eat. I am being ripped apart online and your solution is soup? My first solution is evidence. Soup is because you forgot lunch. I almost laughed. Almost. Then a video alert appeared. People had gathered outside Noah and Grace's school, holding signs with my face on them. My chair scraped the floor. Daniel was already reaching for his phone. At the school, I found my children in the counselor's office. Grace was crying into her sleeve. Noah kept telling her he would fight everyone, but his chin was trembling. Mommy, Grace asked, are we bad? I knelt in front of them. The noise outside hit the windows like stones. No. Baby. People are confused. Adults lie loudly when they are scared. Noah grabbed my hand. Are they going to take us? I looked at his fingers wrapped around mine. So small. So trusting. And something inside me went still. No. I said, not while I am breathing. Once they were safe with Ruth and our security team, I called Daniel. No more defense. I said, I want every door open, every file, every witness. His answer was quiet. I have been waiting for you to say that. The first door we opened was my Uncle Ray. Margaret paid him to go on television and cry about how I had abandoned the family that raised me. He claimed Margaret had paid my mother's hospital bills years before, and that I had repaid kindness with greed. Daniel found the wire transfer before the episode finished airing. Ray took $200,000 from Margaret's assistant. He said, placing the records in front of me. I stared at the paper. She still thinks debt is a leash. She is wrong. No. I said, she is old. There is a difference. The custody hearing was set before Judge Harlan Pierce, a longtime Whitmore donor. Margaret moved fast because people like her believed speed could outrun truth. Daniel moved faster. We drove north through heavy rain to find Dr. Samuel Reed, the former Whitmore medical director who had vanished after Elena Cross died. His cabin stood off a rural road, half hidden by wet pines. He opened the door with a shotgun in his hands and guilt in his eyes. Daniel raised both palms. We are not here to hurt you. Dr. Reed looked at me. You are the seamstress? I am the mother. That broke him. Inside, with rain beating the roof, he gave us a black notebook and a hard drive. Margaret ordered the substitutions. He said, cheaper drugs, altered labels, false testing reports. I signed releases because I was afraid. Your pills were part of it. Mrs. Cross's treatment was part of it. There are dozens more. My throat closed. Did Ethan know? I asked. The doctor looked down. He knew enough to stay quiet. Outside. Headlights cut through the trees. Daniel took my arm. We need to go. Black vans blocked the road. Men stepped out in raincoats. Not police. Not security. Something uglier. Daniel pushed the notebook into my coat. Run to the old service path, he said. I am not leaving you. Leela. No. He looked at me then. Really looked. And something passed between us that had nothing to do with court or revenge. Together, he said, we ran through mud. Branches whipping our faces. Dr. Reed stumbling behind us. A gunshot cracked the trees. I did not stop. I thought of Noah. Grace. The candlelit room. The first cry. The silence after. We reached Daniel's car through a back road and drove without headlights until the vans disappeared behind us. By morning, the evidence was copied, encrypted, and delivered to federal investigators, state regulators, and every attorney representing Whitmore victims. Margaret still held her anniversary gala that night. That was her mistake. She believed cameras were weapons only rich people could hold. Axter Wenny Gens. The ballroom of the Whitmore Grand Hotel glittered with chandeliers, white roses, and donors in black suits. Reporters lined the back wall, ready to praise Whitmore Health for decades of service. Margaret stood on stage in gold. Ethan beside her, Ava near him with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Then the doors opened. I walked in wearing red, not bridal white, not widow black, red. Like blood that refused to stay hidden, security moved toward me. Daniel appeared at my side, holding a court order and a look that made them reconsider their careers. Ethan stepped down from the stage. You were not invited. I was buried. I said, I came anyway. Margaret leaned toward me, whispering through her smile, walk out now, or I will take your children before sunrise. I took the microphone from the podium. The room quieted. I faced the cameras. Whitmore Health is celebrating service tonight. So let us discuss who they served. The screen behind me changed. Documents appeared. Orders signed by Margaret. Lab reports altered before approval. Emails about contaminated batches. Felte labels. And shipments released after internal warnings. Then came the records tied to Elena Cross. Then the pill bottle given to me while I was pregnant. Gasps spread across the room. Margaret grabbed the podium. These are lies. Dr. Reed walked in with federal agents. No, he said, voice shaking. They are mine. Families of victims entered behind him. Not in gowns or tuxedos, but in church dresses, work boots, uniforms. Grief. They carried photos. Mothers, fathers, children, people who had trusted a name and paid with bodies. Ava stared at the screen. Then at Ethan. What is this? She hissed. He reached for her. Ava. Not here. She slapped him so hard the microphone caught it. You told me she was crazy. Ava said, you told me your first marriage was over? The second screen showed my marriage certificate, still active when Ethan married Ava. His face drained of color. I looked at him. You married a lie in a rented tuxedo and called it a legacy. Ava ripped off her ring and threw it at his feet. I will not drown with your family. She left through a wall of cameras. Margaret screamed for security. No one moved. Federal agents stepped onto the stage. Ethan looked at me. Finally small. Lila. Please. I held his gaze. You should have begged before the rain. They took Margaret first. She fought like the floor belonged to her. Ethan followed with his head down. Wrists held together. Every camera catching the collapse of the man who once thought my silence was permanent. I should have felt joy. Instead, I felt tired. Then an officer approached Daniel and me. There is a call from your home. He said, it is about the children. My body went cold. We drove so fast the city lights smeared across the windows. I imagined every nightmare at once. Margaret's last order, Ethan's final cruelty, a stranger at the door. When I burst into the house, Ruth was on the couch with Noah against her shoulder and Grace curled beside him. They were safe. Shaken. Feverish. But safe. They felt something. Ruth said, kids know when storms pass over their mothers. I gathered them into my arms. and the world narrowed to their warm cheeks, their uneven breathing, the smell of shampoo and blankets. Noah whispered. Did you win? I kissed his hair. I came home. That means I won. The next day, Whitmore Health was everywhere. Investigations, arrests, audits, victims speaking, assets frozen, hospital contracts suspended. Margaret suffered a stroke during questioning and lost the sharp tongue she had used like a blade. Ethan waited in county jail for sentencing. Ava's lawyers filed to erase every tie. Daniel found me barefoot in the kitchen, still wearing the red dress from the gala, making pancakes because Grace had asked for them, and normal things mattered more than headlines. It is over, he said. No, I said, flipping a pancake badly. It is changing. He placed an envelope on the counter. Ethan wants to see you before sentencing. He says there is something only you deserve to hear. I almost threw it away. Then I thought of the girl in the rain who never got a full answer. The jail smelled like metal. Bleach. And old regret. Ethan sat behind thick glass, thinner than I remembered. His eyes sunk deep into his face. He picked up the phone with shaking fingers. You came, he said. I came to close the door. He swallowed. My mother changed the pills. I saw her do it. I knew. The room seemed to tilt, but I did not fall. I told myself she was handling a problem. He said, crying now. I told myself the family had to survive. I was a coward. I let her try to kill them. I closed my eyes for 1 second. When I opened them, the last thread snapped. Thank you, I said. He blinked. For what? For proving I was right to never bring them to you. Let me see them once. He begged. Please. I just want to hear them call me Dad. I stood. Their father died the night you left us in the rain. My children know love. They do not need biology wearing handcuffs. Lila, I forgave you so I could sleep. I will never forget you. Because forgetting is how monsters get invited back inside. I hung up the phone and walked away. Outside, Daniel waited by the car. He did not ask what Ethan said. He only opened the door, took my bag, and offered his hand. Ready to go home? I looked up at the clean morning sky. Yes, I said. This time, for good. A year later, I opened a sewing school for single mothers on the coast of Maine. The building was small, bright, and always smelled like coffee, salt air, and fabric chalk. The old machines sang every morning, not as chains, but as proof that hands once used for survival could build freedom. Noah and Grace chased gulls on the beach after class. Ruth taught the women how to stretch a grocery budget like a magic trick. Daniel came on weekends at first, then more often, then finally stopped pretending he was only there to check paperwork. One evening, the sun dropped orange over the water while my children built a crooked sandcastle. Daniel wrapped his jacket around my shoulders. Leela, he said, careful as always. Is there room in the story you are writing for someone who wants to stay? I looked at Noah, laughing, with wet sand on his knees. I looked at Grace, putting shells on the castle like jewels. I looked at the man beside me, the one who never asked me to be smaller so he could feel strong. There has been room for you for a long time, I said. He smiled. And for the first time, the future did not feel like a trap. I used to think justice meant watching Ethan and Margaret lose everything. But real justice was not their fall. It was my children sleeping without fear. It was my name on the door. It was the sound of women learning to stitch their own lives back together. It was standing on a beach with scars I no longer hid. Choosing love without handing over my power. So tell me, if you were me, would you have let Ethan meet the children after what he admitted? Or did I make the only decision a mother could make?